Welcome to Real Estate Investing Abundance, the show for busy, fulfilled professionals like you to learn how to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. Now, here is your host, Dr. Alan Lomax.
Hello, enlightened investors. Delighted to be back with you today. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. If you're tuning in for the first time, I hope you enjoy the show. With us today is a go-getter 20-ish something who has a story that will inspire us at any age. At 19, he started his real estate investing career by wholesaling and house hacking. At only 25, he owns a total of 37 units. Let's get inspired with Nathan. Welcome to the show, Nathan. Start us off with a story of an experience from your formative years that helped you to be the person that you are today.
Yeah, so I started really young doing just yard work around the neighborhood, just learning a good work ethic. And that's really what comes down to, I think, is what formed my career now. It's a good work ethic because, just nothing stops me there. So I think really what really impacted it is starting at a young age. I started my little lawn business that I still have today, and I just worked in that and just really learned the value of good hard work, and just used that to go to my real estate career, and here we are today.
Sounds like a wonderful start. How young were you when you started your lawn business?
14. I have worked for a few other people, so I had my stuff on the side. I have worked for other people too, but about 14 years old.
Oh, okay. About middle school and starting into high school.
Right. Just neighborhood stuff.
That probably taught you a lot of things, not just a work ethic, but you're big on lowering and cutting expenses, and probably you learned that in your lawn business. So talk to us a little bit how you apply that to your real estate.
Correct. Obviously, when I started young, the lack there of money was really that was a big problem. So I had to figure out a way to either increase my money or actually increase my money and decrease my expenses. So what I would do is I would write out a monthly expenditure like budget, and then I would follow that to the T, and I would honestly make like a competition out of it. And I'm a little more extreme than most people, but I would live on barely anything and figure out how I could come up with a way to have my expenditures pay for themselves, really. Just have it to where I was living almost for free, and then any kind of money I had, I would just save it in the bank. And then I did wholesale and stuff like that. That would have me a good little boost of cash. And then eventually got to a point where I could afford to buy a single family home, lived in that, house hacked it, and then turned that equity into a fourplex and then a 32 unit. And now we're working on a 36 unit complex we have on a contract now. So it's just kind of it's really more of a domino effect. You put the hard work in it first, and it's a real grind at first, and you question yourself, but it really is worth it, and starting to really get that snowball effect now.
So in lowering the expenses, so you just lived as minimally as possible, and you actually set out an actual budget each month in terms of your expenditures. Could you go into some of the basics of those expenditures from those early years? And how did you come and determine, well, I can cut these expenses, I have to have these? So tell us a little bit about the details of that experience.
Yeah, so like the first one was like housing. So when I first moved out of my parents' house, I lived in a rental house. That's actually the house I actually bought, and I'm still sitting in it today. Even as a rental, though, I figured out I'd get roommates and soften the blow of rent. And then we split utilities, stuff like that. And when I bought the house, I basically just house hacked it. So my rent, quote unquote, turned into a mortgage, which was lower. And I just rented the other rooms like I did before and turned that into, I think I paid a little bit of money. I wasn't really actually making any money off of it, but definitely saving money there. And then for everything else, really, I'd figure out like my car note, stuff like that. The business, my lawn business would pay for my truck note and insurance, stuff like that. Just finding little ways to not be personally responsible for any bills. It was just like either the business owned it or I'd find a way to make itself pay for itself, stuff like that. But basically, the main expense was the housing, and I got that down to, I think, $100 a month for a few years. And then now I obviously don't have any roommates anymore, but still, I'm at a point now where I can actually afford that expense now.
What a wonderful way to start that out. Of course, a lot of sacrifices. So you had roommates who were helping you to pay your mortgage. Were they actual roommates, or did you divide up the house, or were you all sharing the house and all the facilities of the house? How did you actually go about the house hacking?
Yeah, we were all sharing the house. It was just a regular single family house. I had the master bedroom, and then I had two roommates with the guest bedrooms, and they had their own guest bathroom, but it still was tough. It really definitely was a sacrifice, especially I'm married now and the wife was there for the whole thing. So it really is a sacrifice at first. But as long as you have that goal in the future, it really is worth it.
So did you refinance this home or did you sell this home? How did you come up with the cash to actually expand? I think you said the next purchase was a fourplex. Was that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I actually purchased the house seller financing. I only put $2,000 down on it, and then once I fixed the house up, it was a complete wreck. But once I fixed the house up, I actually got married. We no longer had the roommates, but I had a bunch of equity in the house, so I just refinanced out of the seller financing into a normal mortgage, and I had a HELOC on this house for about $120,000, and then I actually seller financed the fourplex for only $7,000 down. So I really didn't even use the HELOC until I got the 32 unit complex. And I used the cash and the HELOC and a little bit of other stuff for the 32 unit. And then now going forward with the 36 unit, we're just snowballing that into a bigger deal now.
So for those of us who aren't all that familiar with the lending environment, can you explain to us what a HELOC is and how they work and how you were able to get that without a W-2 job?
It's a home equity line of credit, and it's basically you have a lot of equity in your house. Instead of going cash out refinancing, you can just get similar to a second mortgage, and they would just loan about, I think it's 80% of your equity in your home to you. A lot of people do it for pool or renovation, stuff like that, but I already had all of that done. So I just used it as a down payment or actually the renovations of a 32 unit complex with some cash I had. And now we're about to refinance the 32 unit to pay that money back to where the HELOC is back at zero. And then we'll be on to the next one.
Enlightened investors, we'll be right back after this important announcement. I have a big ask that will only take a moment of your time. Ratings and reviews are the lifeblood of our podcast. So to leave a review, iPhone or other Apple iOS device users, go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes. For all you non-Apple device users, go to podchasers.com. On either platform, search for Real Estate Investing Abundance. Once found, please leave a review and a rating. Subscriptions are also vital to our show's success, so please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. It is free to subscribe, and you can unsubscribe at any time.
It seems like you'd have to have a great deal of equity in the fourplex in order to have the funding to go into a 32 unit. So fill us in on the details on that particular transaction.
So I purchased the fourplex, I think it was for $242, I believe, or something close to that. And it's probably worth about $340 now. Again, it was another fixer-upper fourplex. I bought it seller financing, very low money down. I put all the money I had basically to fix it. I have not refinanced that one yet. I still have it seller financed, but I basically really didn't even need the equity for that one because I had a good bit of cash saved up and I had my HELOC for my personal house. My plans are for that one is whenever we finish this 32 unit, this 36 unit we have under contract, I can always access my HELOC and I'll get a cash out refinance on the fourplex into a portfolio loan. That way, when I go to move out of the single family home now, I'll just single family home the fourplex into one loan, turn that into basically a portfolio loan, I guess you could call it, and use that equity to buy another one. And basically, when I move into a new house, I'm going to have the cash flow from the fourplex and the single family home pay my mortgage. So I won't have any mortgage. I'll probably make about $500 a month actually on top of not having a mortgage.
Can you give us the figures on the 32 unit? You said the fourplex was worth about three something. So did you get owner financing on the 32 unit?
Not that was actually a broker deal. So we bought it for $878. They actually $1.1 million for it. We got them down to $878. We put about $200,000 in renovations in it. It's a completely renovated complex. It's gated now. We put a lot of money in that complex. It'll probably appraise, we're thinking 1.45, 1.5 million. We'll take that equity out of that, do a cash out refinance into probably about 2 months or so. We'll probably do that. And once we cash out refinance that one, we'll pay our initial investment out back to ourselves and just look for another deal to park that in. Now the 36 unit, this one is on the contract. We've now since brought in equity partners. So our goal is to soften the blow because we're buying in an area that's a cash flow market. Like Louisiana is a pretty decent cash flow market. The equity is decent here, but it's really not more of a equity play. It's more of a cash flow play. So the goal here is to acquire another asset with as little money as our own, or at least as little upfront money as our own for the next one. So this 36 unit, we're actually bringing a partner in to soften that blow, and we should be closing on that one. pretty soon, actually.
You did this all on your own, the 32 unit.
I had two partners.
You had two partners, okay. And so were they contributing cash, or were they just contributing sweat equity on this deal?
Cash, both of them cash and sweat equity. The cash we required, I think, was, I believe, $160 something thousand down, and then we put, like I said, about $200,000 of cash into it, renovate it. But we also had a construction loan, so that really helped. So I think total investment we each put, I think the total was about $160,000 of our own money. And that was through savings, HELOCs, whatever.
And so you and the partners put the cash together. You got a construction loan, and that covered your reserves. Were you getting any cash flow from the beginning of this deal?
Yeah. So what we wanted to do was stockpile cash and just really get the construction done as fast as possible. So we all agreed that we wouldn't pay ourselves any cash flow for at least 6 months. We actually did that for 10 months. We're making cash flow in it now, and we're basically just using that cash flow to pay ourselves back early into it now. But we all agreed it mattered to us that the construction was done quickly so we can do a cash out refinance. So we did not make any cash flow for the first 10 months or so. And now we're currently making cash flow on it.
Excellent. So you're doing this all in Louisiana? Whereabouts in Louisiana?
In Baton Rouge, we have the campus of LSU here. So we have pretty diversified economy compared to the rest of the state. The state of Louisiana is very reliant on oil, but just Baton Rouge is a little bit different because we have the capital city. So we have different law jobs here. We also have the university, which is a ton of jobs provided by that university. You have your blue collar shipping and stuff like that with the Mississippi River. So it's decently diversified, not as well as like a city like Tampa or something like that, but it's definitely decent, a cash flow market for sure. It's and we're all familiar with it. We all live here. So I think in total, the 32 unit pays us about $3,200 to $3,300 a piece in cash flow a month.
You have this philosophy, don't your seeds. Explain that to us.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm a little bit more strict on my personal finances just because I'm a little bit younger and I can. But my whole thing is I don't spend any of my cash flow until I have $10,000 a month of passive income. And even if I have $10,001, I'll allow myself to spend $1. The reason why I'm doing that is because my goal is 1,000 units. So until I have significant progress working towards that goal, I don't want to spend any of my cash flow just because I don't really need it. If I needed it, but I really don't need it. I don't spend any cash flow, and I just use the equity, cash flow, and savings to put in a down payment of another one. That way, it just speeds up the snowball of purchasing and renovating projects. So the don't eat your seed is basically my seeds are my cash flow. So I save all that money, act like that money doesn't exist. So currently right now I'm saving about $6,500 a month. So usually every year or so I could buy personally with my own equity another deal. And especially now we're bringing on partners, I'm getting close to that $10,000 a month cash flow goal. So once that happens, then I'll obviously allow myself to not lifestyle creep, but increase my spending a little bit more than it actually is now. And I'm just very, very strict on that. And I know it's a little bit excessive. I just have my goals that I have to meet, and I'm a numbers guy, so I have it calculated on when I should hit those goals. And that's basically in a nutshell what it means. Is basically I'm not eating cash flow, saving it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Would you ever invest all your money in a single stock? Very unlikely. Yet investors are willing to risk $50,000 to $100,000 in a single property in real estate all the time. Avestor is the world's first customizable real estate investment platform. Investors can build their own custom portfolios selecting investments across multiple asset classes such as single-family homes, multifamily, student housing, self-storage, and shopping centers. You can also invest across multiple markets and different time frames. Avestor also enables other real estate entrepreneurs and syndicators to build and use Avestor's infrastructure and cloud platform to create their own customizable real estate funds. To learn more, visit us at avestorinc.com. Avestor, real estate investing made simple.
That's interesting. I was thinking when you were talking about seeds that you were probably talking about the equity in your properties.
It's just, like I said, a mixture of equity, savings, and cash flow.
Okay. Are you holding the properties, the first single family home and the fourplex? You planning to hold those and let the equity grow on those? Or are you selling those as you go?
I'm holding them. I'll hold them as long as I possibly can. I know at a certain point in my career, it probably will make more sense to sell since there's a scale on bigger complexes. But I'll probably hold them another 5 years or so, and then I'll reevaluate and see if I should sell or maybe just refinance them. And usually I'll probably just still hold them. Just depends on where I'm at. what I decided to do with management plays and stuff like that.
You started out by yourself and you have brought on partners. Talk to us about that process of finding partners, screening partners, actually teaming up with the partners, and how's the partnership going?
Yeah, I found both of my current partners through real estate stuff. My first partner, I actually went to high school with him. He's 2 years older than me, but I've known him for a long time. So there was already a trust established there. And then he went off to the military and lived in South Carolina for a while. And when he came back, I found out that he was doing real estate, and we kind of got together and started throwing some ideas off each other, and that relationship built there. And then my other partner, I found him through real estate meetups. And he's great too. He's older than us, but it balances out perfectly because he has more of the grounds. We're two young guys, and we're all just wide open, and he brings us back to reality. It's a great partnership, actually. So it works out perfectly.
You filled us in on the managing process and the scaling process, but give us a little bit more detail about the management processes. Are you actually self-managing your 32 unit, and do you plan to self-manage this next unit that you're working on?
So on the 32 unit in particular, and the 36 unit also, it's in an affordable housing area. So it's a very management intensive area. So we actually have an on-site manager that lives in our 32 unit who would commute to the 36 back and forth, and also the 4 unit. So I have a gentleman that works for us. He does our management, keeps everything in line with our complexes, making sure morale is good and people are getting along, stuff like that. So we actually have a resident manager, and most people don't recommend that. Just in this particular area, it's a very high intensive management area, so it really does help having him there all times. So that's how we do our management, and we also use like Cozy and Smart Move as our documentation of it. We're actually looking to get Appfolio. It's just with Appfolio, you have to have at least 100 units. We're getting there. It's just right now we're using Appfolio, Excel, and TransUnion Smart Move, along with a few different things, like we'll use Stessa and stuff like that, but our main is Cozy and Smart Move.
So the 32 unit is what did you call it?
It's affordable housing, low income
housing. So does that come with rent regulations?
Not in Louisiana, no. It's just a lower income area, but it's actually positioned pretty well. If you look at the downtown area, our campus, the campus is south of downtown, and it's actually positioned really close to campus. It's just a low income area in that one spot. So eventually that area will become part of the campus. I know actually from plans, LSU does plan on expanding that there. So it's only a matter of time, but for now it's still affordable housing. So the management you have to manage it pretty well because it does have crime there and stuff like that. And if people are listening from Louisiana, you'll be familiar with the Tigerland area. That's where this complex is at. So yeah, it's affordable housing. The rents are $750. Yeah, you have your communal wash house, stuff like that. Just affordable, low income housing. But our whole goal is to fortify it, make it safe, clean, updated to standards, and just kind of let it go until eventually the play would be either somebody come and LSU would expand the campus, and it would be either worth more or get higher tenants, or it would be torn down to build a nicer complex.
Currently, you're keeping it as a C-class property, but making it a high-level C-class property. And you said you made it a gated community. Did it have fencing around it and a gate before you purchased it, or was it pretty wide open?
Not at all. Yeah, it was pretty wide open. The biggest problem we had was people would break in at night to the vacant units and take parting gifts. So that we figured and there's a lot of kids that live there too. So and it has a nice courtyard where the kids play football and stuff like that. So our goal was to create like a nice, safe kind of attitude there to keep all the riffraff out. And that way it's controllable, it's safe. People have private ownership there. Like I said, we have a nice courtyard. People gather there. So that was really our high priority of gating the complex, just because really you had a lot of people walking through the complex and just looking around that shouldn't have been there. And that really helped the morale of the complex. Okay, these guys they care about our safety. And that was our number one priority. So that's what we did first.
I can see how that could be a real value add. Just putting in the fencing and the gating probably gave you the opportunity to increase the rents. So how much did you increase the rents from when you purchased it to today?
So we had quite a few vacants when we bought it, but the average rent was about $550. Now they're all at $750. And so we increased the value of the property by fair amount. And especially too with the gate, it also allowed us to rent to a little bit higher clientele, because before it's basically people who were okay with living in a high crime, people walking up and down your sidewalks at night kind of thing. And there's definitely a market for that too, but we just wanted to increase the standard of that complex. So we went from 550 average rents to 600 rents to 750 rents for everybody. And we do pay for water there. It's not all profit, but it does cash flow pretty well.
That's quite an increase in the value of the property from 550 to 750. Lots of equity. Good job. And with a good management plan, you've turned that property around. You're using that property to actually scale and go into other units from the success. You've talked a little bit about that process, but give us a little bit more specifics in terms of the details of going from a 32 unit, I think you said the next unit is a 36 or 40 unit complex, something like that. So tell us the details in that process.
Yeah, right now we're looking to get a more long-term, like a CMBS product loan on this refinance of this property. And a lot of people are against it just because it's a basically you're locked in it for however many years the term is, like 8 years or so. We wanted to do that just because it's attractive interest rates with an attractive amortization, and that'll also increase our cash flow from where it is now, believe it or not. So we should be doing about $3,400 a month each. And once we go to the 36 unit, we'll do the same thing. We'll just get a similar regular commercial loan with a construction loan on the back of it to renovate this complex. Because this complex is actually very close, very similar to this same complex we're talking about now. So we're just going to do the same paint color, same flooring, same appliances and everything, just like we did on the first one, because we've already established those relationships with the suppliers. So we're basically just going to rinse and repeat on it. So we're going to do the construction loan, get everything renovated, bump the rents. Usually we have to vacate the property or people just leave on their own. So that kind of helps us a little bit. And we do want people to stay as much as possible, but sometimes it's kind of hard to convince them to stay with that increased rent. So basically, completely redo the complex section by section, usually about 10 units at a time. And then once we completely have all the interior renovated, we start looking for different loan products and start the refinance process to go to the next one. So once we finished each section or each phase of the project, we just check off different things. And obviously we do exterior search to get that way to let the tenants know, hey, these guys are coming here to do work. And then we also poll each unit. So we send them a questionnaire, like what they recommend or what they would want as amenities in the project. And that way they have that sense of, okay, they actually care of what we say. Because at the end of the day, it's their home. We don't live there. So that's the goal, is to just improve their quality of life. Because some of these people are living very rough housing situations, like roaches and stuff like that. So the first overall goal is to improve these people's way of life. Second is obviously to improve the property. And third would be to reposition the property because we have to make a profit also. But yeah, and we're just rinse and repeat and just keep it going there. And once we go out of state, we're actually home in Tampa, Florida. So we've actually started locating different deals. We're going to do a different play there, I think. Instead of doing affordable housing, we're probably going to jump up to the B space just because we're a plane right away. So we want to keep the management, a different approach, really. We're just going to keep it the third-party management. Probably not going to have in-house managers, just a different kind of scale up on that one, because the affordable housing space is great, but it's basically a management play. You're paid on how well you can manage the property.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. As an industry-leading, relationship-focused, design-build construction firm, Mosaic Construction has worked in many different asset classes from multifamily to retail, medical, industrial, and commercial. Mosaic Construction works to execute interior and exterior renovations with their team of trades and project managers. Their experience with value-add improvements has resulted in increased ROI and long-term value of the assets. They work nationally in partnership with local trades to deliver thoughtful, problem-solving construction management solutions to all their clients. For a personal, no-obligation consultation, call Ira Singer, 773-491-3145, or email Ira at mosaicconstruction.net. You can also find Ira on LinkedIn.
You basically vacated the properties and did a mass renovation on all of the vacant units. That sounds like a big, risky way to go, but it worked out well.
We did it in phases. So like about 10 units at a time. So with this particular Tigerland property now, there was 10 vacant. So we didn't have to vacate anybody for the first phase. So once we did those first 10 units, then we either asked tenants that were already there to move into the new ones at the new rate, or they just voluntarily left for the next 10. So we didn't completely vacate the property. We just did 10 at a time. So we did 3 different phases on this one. And this next one will probably be 3 different phases at 12 units each. So we won't ever completely vacate the property. It's just we vacate the sections that we do at a time. That makes sense.
There's a lot of complexities there in doing renovations, and you're doing complete unit renovations. How did you locate the contractors who are doing your renovation for you? What did you do in terms of the screening process, and how have they actually worked out for you?
Yeah, so we knew a contractor friend of ours that did the first few phases of our project. Then we decided to bring it in-house just because we were going a little bit over budget. So we have connections with a lot of day laborers and stuff like that we brought in-house. And one of our partners stepped up as a project manager and project managed the rest of the project to stay within our budget there. And it worked out great. We went over budget for the first two phases, but not a crazy amount. And then the last two phases landed up, we were under budget. So it worked out evenly there. So we weren't too under budget. We weren't too over budget. So it worked out, right where we needed it to be. So it actually worked out pretty well.
So one of the partners is actually the project manager, and he's taking care of all the subcontracting and managing that whole project. So that's pretty much a full-time job for him. Is that right?
It is, yes. And he's a real estate broker and agent too, so he has a little bit of flexibility there. The next project, we probably won't be doing that. Just like I said, it was more of we had to really to save the money there. But it worked out. It all worked out in the end. We're all happy with the results.
Okay. You have done both seller financing and you've done bank financing. In your upcoming endeavor, that is bank financing, is that correct? And the Tampa project is definitely going to be bank financing, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
What are the advantages, disadvantages of banks as opposed to seller financing, and how do you go about finding seller finance properties?
I personally love seller finance projects just because it's more personal. It's a little bit more negotiable too. A lot of more, we'll call them savvy investors will do that if they've owned the property for a long time and they don't plan on, if they don't really need the cash. So it's pretty tax advantageous to them. But a lot of people too want to do a 1031 exchange, or if it's a bigger project, bigger properties, it's way more rare to find those just because they're either trying to sell, buy into a new project, or sell and do something else with it. So we definitely prefer the seller financing. It gets a little bit tougher to find those bigger projects you acquire. And the way that we do seller financing, like I said, we treat it very similar to a bridge loan almost. We obviously try to negotiate the interest rates hard, on those. Most of the time, they'll probably want to get 5 or 6%, which is not too terrible. And then for the bank loans, like I said, it's very similar. It's just really, instead of dealing with the person face to face, we're dealing with a bank. So we just try to keep it as simple as possible.
You have this process of OPM to acquire assets. What is OPM?
Other people's money. So that's what we actually recently started doing, just because the properties are getting larger and more expensive. So we bring in equity partners that are usually passive, unless they choose not to be passive, but most of the time they want to be passive. And basically what we do there is we give them a portion of the equity and we manage the entire process of repositioning, or if it's a light value add, just do it there. But for these larger value adds, especially here in Baton Rouge, we control all of the construction process, the rent lease ups, we do tenant relations, and then obviously the asset management, taking care of the property manager, stuff like that. Way it's true passive income for them. And obviously without them, we couldn't take down the deal. So it's a win-win situation. They get a good return on their money and they get good equity in the property, and they benefit directly in the cash flow and the equity created in the property. And we actually get to take the building down with our small percentage ownership.
That sounds like syndication.
It's a joint venture. It's not quite, because these aren't really big enough for syndications. It's just a basic joint venture. We eventually do want to get into syndications when we get into larger deals. These are just $1 million or $1.5 million or so. So they're not quite as big enough for syndication, we think. Yeah, we have it.
Nathan, before we go into our last portion of the program, tell our viewers and listeners how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so they can just find me on Facebook at Nathan Milazzo. My last name is Milazzo. Or they can email me at Milazzo, Milazzo 171@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Yeah, and they can just find me on Facebook. I usually post updates of videos of the properties that we're working on right now. And yeah, so they can find me there.
Well, wonderful. Share with us one of the most difficult setbacks in your life. How did you come through that time, and what did you learn from the experience?
Probably the most difficult is living in the single-family home with other roommates while renovating the project. That was definitely not recommended, but worth it in the long run. Very tough. Test your personal relationships with my wife and stuff like that, and it worked out great. We're very happy that we did it. It's just very tough to live as a woman with a bunch of guys in a construction zone. So we definitely made the sacrifice, and we're glad we did it. But it was definitely a very tough time. What we learned about that is, if we do, which we probably won't do another house hack, but if we did, we'd probably buy the complex or buy the house first, have it renovated, then move into it later. That would help a lot, just because when you're doing it, it takes twice as long when you're living in it because you're moving stuff around. And it's just 3 times more stressful because you have roommates that you're trying to please. And then you're trying to stay within a budget also. So you're trying to get things done in a timely manner. It just makes it way harder just because you're moving things around. You're having to ask permission to go in their rooms to do paint and flooring and stuff like that. Definitely a stressful situation, but obviously that laid the foundation for where we are today.
It does sound challenging, particularly as a couple. I started out house hacking as well, but I divide a single family home into a triplex. So we weren't living on top of each other. And of course, I renovated before renting the units, which reduced the stress considerably. What are you most thankful for in your life these days?
I'm thankful for the support that I have, really, because without the support, it wouldn't be a whole lot harder. So my wife is definitely very supportive. Business partners are very supportive. Family is also supportive. And that's really important too, is support going through this, because you have your ups and downs in this business. And especially when you're dealing with low income housing, there's a lot of different roadblocks you run into and stuff like that. So support is really important.
And can you share with us 3 good things from the last 24 hours?
Okay, so the last 24 hours, let's see, that's tough. We actually met with one of our potential partners on this 36 unit. We're actually meeting with them later, if that counts, for lunch. We met with a lender. So really the progress in the last 24 hours has been nice. Usually towards the end of the week is when we start really getting active on that, just because our clients become freed up. So yeah, the last 24 hours, I'd say the progress was great. And obviously free time with my wife and my little young daughter I have. So it's always great.
Wonderful. How are you putting your success as an investor and entrepreneur to work to create universal well-being and abundance for all beings?
I have that loan business I still have. It's pretty sizable now. And I have employees that work in that company. And I always try to teach them the value of hard work and investing in yourself. So my goal with my guys is to have them graduate. All my guys are college students. So have them graduate completely debt free, pay your way through college. I've already had one particular guy do that. And we're so proud of him and so excited for him. And we also have one that's in the process of doing it, who eventually wants to come work for us in the real estate business and is a really go-getter guy. And just teaching my guys about financial independence, things that the school system doesn't really teach them anymore, at least the pre-college days. But yeah, just teaching them the importance of graduating college debt free, what that could do for you in the long run, financial independence, different ways to save money, stuff like that. That's really my goal for my guys, because I really care about my guys. Yeah, that. And then for well-being is just to start getting more of a lifestyle business, start doing more, start traveling more, actually giving back more, obviously, and improving the community around us. That's our number one goal, like I said, is to give these people a voice that they would normally have, and also a safe place to live.
Some wonderful endeavors. Well, you're a young man, but think to the end of your life. What do you want as your epitaph?
Probably more of he gave more than he took, and he left the place better than he got it. That's really the whole point to me really of life, is to leave this place better than you, and then give my kids and grandkids opportunities that I might not necessarily able to have, and then to do good in the world. Because I honestly think that financial independence, a lot of people look as financially well-off people as necessarily like bad people. But I think really, if you have the financial well-being, you can do more good than if you didn't. That's really my goal, especially when I get later in my life, is to start doing more projects like that with affordable housing, and really just teaching people about the choices that they might not think they have, because a lot of these people just don't really think they have much of a choice. So just leave this place better than I received it, and hopefully help some of these low-income kids improve their situation and their lifestyle.
Some wonderful goals and a wonderful epitaph. I hope you have a long and fruitful life. Nathan, it has been a pleasure being with you today, and a very informative interview. Thank you for sharing your skills, knowledge, and expertise. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.